Hello everyone, welcome to another coding session. In this session, we'll be looking at handling errors using Asyncio. Okay, so let's get started. Error handling is quite complicated, but I want to make it simple and make it easy for you. So let's start. I'm importing Asyncio and have three functions. All of them are like func A, which is just printing hello, and then sleeping for 10 seconds, and then this output result from A. Similarly, function B sleeping for 3 seconds, result from B. And then function C sleeping for 5, and then there's a small difference here. In this function I'm raising an exception, value error exception, saying okay, error in function C. Let's see how do we handle case like this. So we'll start with the most basic example, right? So I just call this function. Okay, so how you typically call a function is you just do here, because it's an async function, I do a wait, and then I get a result, and then I'm printing the result. Let's run this, and in this function there's no error, right? So it should go through smoothly. So I run this, right? So you see the output. So basically you get hello from function A, right? And then it's sleeping for 10 seconds, and then it should return this as a result from A. Okay, cool. So we get this runs smoothly. Okay. Uh, so I get output as a result from A. Now let's change this. Instead of this, now let me call result is equal to, let me call this function which throws an exception. Okay. So what happens if I just call this function? Cool. And then I want to just print this. Okay. Right. So this function raises an exception. So I'm assuming that this code should raise an exception. Okay. I run this. So initial part goes through fine, and then it sleeps for 3 seconds. All right. So I sleep for 5 seconds, and then you see a value error. This is what you get, right? So okay. Now, um, so how do you handle this? It's like how you handle a normal exception in Python. So you put this, because it's throwing a value error. I'll put this within a try block. Okay. Try, and then exception, try except value error as E, and then I can do print E, right? And then printing the results. Now, because this one is throwing value error, I've put it in a value error, and then let's do this now. Let's run this again. Okay, so I get hello from C, and then because there's a sleep for 5 seconds, and then it should throw an exception. Yeah, but I'm printing this error. It threw an exception. I don't get result from C. It threw an error, but yeah, I can see this because I printed it. So I'm able to handle it properly now. Okay, that so in typically I think this is what you do. Whenever there's an exception, you put it within try except and handle it normal case. Now let's do a more complicated. Now let's say I want to run this in parallel, right? So I'll create a task of each of this sync io dot gather, right? And then func a, function b, and then func C, right? So now I want to run this now. So as I've told you, gather will spin up each of these will be created in the background, and this will run in the background. And let me get the result. Result is equal to this, and then okay, and then I want to print this. So okay, now this function doesn't throw exception, this function doesn't throw, but this throws an exception, right? So let's see if will do I get an output, or does the whole thing crash? So let's run this. Cool. Uh, you see that as soon as I did this, right, within so function A, B, and C, I ran this. The first part printed, and then it crashed because there was a this function crashed. But you see, an output is that the gathering future exception was never retrieved, right? So that means one of the child tasks, right? So these are child tasks. One of tasks of future, one of them threw an exception, but it was never retrieved. So basically, what gather does is if any of your child task throws an exception, the whole thing, the parent, this is the parent coroutine. Basically, it crashes, and then it sends cancelled error to all of these tasks, and then the whole thing crashes around. Now, what you do is there's an important thing is whenever you're using gather, and you think that one of the child tasks can throw an exception, you put a there's an option called return exceptions is equal to true. Okay, now run this. Now let's run this. Similar, I just put one change simple, and now I want to run this. Okay, let me clear the screen. And all right, so okay, so oh, there's a basically a source. Okay, I forgot to await this. Let me run this again. Okay, so I get hello from function A, B, and C, and so now you see because I have return exception is equal to true, it didn't crash, but yeah, it's waiting because I have a wait of 10 sleeping here, so 10 of seconds. So cool. Now you see the result. We get correct results from function A and B, but since the last task through an exception, we get that exception. Now what you can do is you can loop through this those through the results and handle the exception. So you can do something like this for res and result. Um, if instance result value error, then print oops error, and then you can oops error or whatever, you can print that, else print result as it is, right? So basically I'm saying if there is an instance I do something, if the result is an instance of value I do something, otherwise I do something else, right? Okay, if I run this, cool. So I get like if there was no error I print it, if there's an error I say okay oops error, and handle it. So basically, what return exception is doing is propagating the exceptions from the child node to the parent node. So parent node is main. Sorry, the parent sub coroutine or task is main, and then these are the child tasks, right? So it doesn't. If exception happens in any one of the child tasks, it gets propagated to the parent this thing, and you can handle it there, right, without throwing an exception, right? And if you don't give this, then basically exceptions are not handled, and then it will crash the whole any if any of the child throws an exception, the whole with gather all of them, all the child. So what happens is, okay, let me remove this. Now, any if we know that this child task is going to throw an exception, right? So whenever it throws an exception, what gather will do is it will kill all the running other running child tasks, right? So function A and B will also get cancelled because C threw an error, right? So that error gets propagated to the main parent coroutine, and then parent coroutine says, hey, now let's kill all the other running child. So you don't get a result, and then everything crashes, right? So that's what we saw earlier. Let me show that again to you. So if I do this and then do print result, so it's sleeping for 5 seconds and then crashing, right? So you get a crash. Now the thing is, uh, what happens is when you get this crash, there is something called child cancel error. As I told you, since C threw an error, you get that back in the main this thing. But main coroutine then gather sends um, Asyncio cancel task to each of these. Okay, I'll show that to you. So basically, if I put that in a try block, let's say I put this in a asyncio dot cancel error. Okay, as E, then I can say okay, child child func A was cancelled, right? So similarly, I mean this thing I can do for function B also, because the same signal gets propagated to all the functions, right? So since this is sleeping for 10 seconds, this is sleeping for 3 seconds. Let's see. Okay, let's put this also within a try except block. See, B was. Okay, cool. Right, so I've put this in try, and then this is throwing an exception. Now let's run this and what happens. Okay, let me clear it and then do this. Okay, now it's running, sleeping for 5 seconds, and then it'll throw an error. Cool. So it threw an error, but you can see since we are handling that cancelled error, so this error got propagated to gather, right? Now gather realize, okay, I have to cancel all the child nodes, child tasks, right? So it sent a cancelled error, but uh, it got caught in the function A, right? Why did it get caught in the function A? Here is see in this I've put this so I can see that this was cancelled, and since this was sleeping for 10 seconds, this was already a running task, right? So if you see after 5 seconds, this error was thrown, but this by this function B had already finished because this is sleeping only for 3 seconds, so it had already finished. That's why it didn't get any cancel error because it had completed. But this child task A was still running because it was sleeping for 10 seconds, right? And then it got a cancelled error. As soon as it gets a cancelled error, it awakens from sleeping, and then the cancelling finished. But since we are handling the cancelled error, the child might not get cancelled, right? It might still be running. So what you can do is you can do some logging here or whatever, and then you can again do a raise, right? So you can raise it again, saying that okay, I've done whatever logging, and then cancel the task. So this task also gets cancelled, and then the whole thing uh, finishes. All right, so that's it, guys. Let me know in comments if you. I'll be covering exceptional handling more in depth and seeing what see, and we'll see things that can go wrong. Right. All right. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And let me know in the comments if you would want me to cover any topic. All right. Thank you.